That is shasta. No, they said shasta's the other one. Yeah, you're kind of holding on. It's not like you can sit down and relax.
Yeah, and then when you keep the whole point of going high.
I know people are like, oh, I want to do the shasta, and I'm like,
yeah.
I'd much rather do one of these where you go to the several like.
I see the same trees down here.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
There used to be a hike that peak over there.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's on Bragg Canyon property.
Okay.
A skinny piece like a flute, and they hollowed it out. I don't know which they did first, and cut it in half. Here's the two halves, if I can get them together. You get the idea. Split it. Now you got two halves, and there are two colors. You got the brownish red and the cream. And they would have three pieces cut in half. Now they got six. And the kids would play this. They would drop them on the ground. You get a circle of kids sitting around, and they'd take turns. And there's 3 and 3. 3 red, 3 white. That's worth 2 points. Because you can only get it one way. If you see how lucky I am.
Almost.
There's 4 and 2.
Which is common.
There's kind of 5 and 1. This one's kind of half and half. If you get all the same, which isn't good. Well, there's 3 and 3 again. That's pretty good. If you get all white or all red, there's 2 ways to do that. Two ways to get them all the same, all one color. That was worth 1 point. And so they would just go around the circle. Maybe decide, we're going to see who gets to 10 first, or we're going to see who gets to 20 first. And
who wins my hunk of obsidian?
Yeah, well, the kids played it as just a game. The adults, the men, kept playing it. They gambled with it. They might have that piece of obsidian that you can make arrowheads from, and
because the native
somebody
people
would throw that in the pot. Maybe somebody would throw in the ownership of a bow or a.
I'm looking at a wavy leaf soap plant is just starting to come up. You guys have them up in Bidwell Park. They're huge up there. These don't get too big because we have cows. They get to a certain size, munch. Oh. So they always stay petite in size.
And it's used for soap.
Oh, it's used for a variety of things. They could use it for soap. They would also dry it and put it into the water, and it clogs up the fish gills, and so they float to the surface. It stuns them. It stuns them. Yeah.
Underneath that little plant is the stem of the root goes down, and then it becomes a bulb.
Oh, wow.
Inside of these hairs is a bulb, and this is a smaller one. They can be as big as your fist. And there's a few little root pieces that come out underneath this, but this is pretty much the important part. And the Native Americans would dig this up. Inside is a bulb, and that was edible if you cooked it.
Like a baked potato. Garlicky baked potato.
They found if you had just slivers of it and were near water, it would lather up and become a soap, hence the name soap root. While they were doing that, they probably discovered that also when they had it in the water in a stream, it would float, like if it flowed into a little pool or something, it would mess up the gills of a fish and they couldn't breathe, and so they'd come belly up. If the water cleaned out, they would come back to life, but it made it easier to catch fish. It would kind of stun them a little bit. They would take these hairs and make a brush out of it.
Yeah, they would use the bulb and mush it down and make Elmer's glue out of it.
Yeah, the bulb itself could also become a glue, which could then be used to make glue together some, maybe wrap the handle of it, or make a handle and wrap it with leather and glue everything together. But
very resourceful people. Yeah. They didn't have Walmart to go shop.
What did they make their shelters out of around here?
Around here, just tule rushes.
Well, we don't have tule here. So
no, we don't here in the Buttes.
Yeah.
Here they would come times that they would.
When they were here, I kind of wonder if they even had a shelter, because they were here. Think about what October's weather is.
Yeah, it's so warm, mild.
It's warm. It never rains.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if they even had a shelter.
But in the valley, there was a lot of the Yuba City area, Sutter County, was very marshy. Like when it was all the flooding we had, that's what it looked like over when the people were here. Yuba County side was much drier because it goes up into the foothills quicker. So that was where a lot of people lived, along the Kulu villages along the river. The river was just this very gentle, meandering river, little riverlets, not a big, carved out river like we have today, the Sacramento River. They were just much gentler. and so they could get across them in little Thule boats when they needed to. But there's a lot of Thule tools along the edges of all the little marshlands.
In the
So it's an easy
foothills,
source.
I don't know what they did in between, but they would get up to the elevation where they have cedars, and they would use the cedar bark, and they'd just cut off.
They have that in Upper Park.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they would have once you get up in elevation. But
So
here we,
do you think all the Mechoopda and Maidu people believe that the soul source was here on Sutter Buttes? Was that a widespread Sacramento Valley belief?
We really don't know.
you know, I think if they were within view of North Butte, then yes. I mean, of the Sutter Buttes. If they could see it, then it would very likely be in their belief system. If it was not a place that they could see, then maybe not.
Which was the north place where the soul went out?
North Butte is the one that they.
Yeah.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It stands alone.
And that's not the tallest peak, right?
No, it's not.
But it stands alone.
It stands alone.
If you're looking at South Butte, if you look at the north side, it kind of ridges into Twin Peaks.
Sure.
Because one would plug up, and then the pressure would build, and another one would start. Some are small, so most of them are kind of medium sized. Some are big, but.
So 40 to 45 calderas, or how would you define?
We don't know about like by chimneys, like the tubes that came up, or like
peaks. We define them by peaks.
Yeah.
The word caldera in my mind, and I don't know, I'm not a geologist, but it seems to me from what I've seen pictures of, when someone said, well, there's the caldera, it's kind of like you had a volcano and everything caved in. Like Crater Lake would be a good example.
Yeah, it is.
And so Crater Lake's a caldera. If you go to Yellowstone,
That's a caldera.
that's a caldera, but it's huge. It's the rim. So we don't really have that here. We don't have a ring of where anything fell in. They just came up, plugged up, and
I can
died.
give you a really quick geology lesson on volcanoes. Are you ready, ladies?
Oh.
There's 4 types of volcanoes. There's the combo special. Let's see. What do we have? Oh, shaving cream, toothpaste,
Cocoa Puffs.
Cocoa Puffs, and the combo special.
We'll start with toothpaste.
Toothpaste.
This is toothpaste.
a plugged volcano, a dome volcano.
A dome
So
volcano.
it's plugged up because it was a cool, viscous flow. Yeah, you got it. The Cocoa Puffs, that is the cinder cones. They explode.
Like the
Up at Lassen has one.
Lassen, it's named Cinder Cone.
Cinder cone.
In the northeast corner of Lassen
Shaving
Park.
Cream, Hawaii, the oozing lava, the pyroclastic flows, and constantly, if you put shaving cream out of a little dome volcano, it would ooze down. Not a super fast, it depends on the rate in the volume.
And that's a shield volcano in geology terms.
And the combo special is a volcano that does a little bit of each. And so some of those, and they're called composite, I think.
Yeah.
And then there's the caldera. And that's a volcano that has come up and is self-imploded. Because you think about a volcano, especially it would have to be like a shield volcano, not a plug one like we have, because it's hollow in the inside. Like when you've flown over in a helicopter in Hawaii and you see that, there's a magma that comes up, but it's just kind of a shell of a mountain, not solid, and it will self-implode upon itself and then make a sinkhole like Crater Lake. So does that make sense? Now, Cocoa Puffs show.
5 miles. But it would have a weak spot, and there would be a smaller chamber that would feed off of this large one underneath, and the lava would come up and form one of the peaks. It was started out with rhyolite, which is these two here are rhyolite, and it's a very viscous, very thick and pasty. And we describe it like toothpaste. And if you squeeze the tube, it just oozes out. And its temperature was probably around 900 degrees Fahrenheit. So it wasn't flowing rapidly like Hawaii's volcano. And it would come up and plug up the volcano after a while, and then a new one would form. It would, if the lava cooled off, plugged it up, 2 things could happen. One, it could build up pressure and then blow up, and then you'd have rocks flying everywhere. Or it would stay plugged up. Pressure would still be building up. It's all started 1.6 million years ago, and this thing lasted about 300,000 years. And over time, it would all calm down. Pressure would build up. New volcano, and so this one here
And so, what's your take on it? Like, do you think that it's like a fault, you know, from the Sierras? Do you think it's like an errant batholith from like the Coast Range? Like,
I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah.
It's we were told from Brian Hausbach, who is the mammologist.
No,
not
geologist.
mammologist, geologist,
Volcanologist.
There's the word I want. Volcanologist from Sac State. He's a professor at Sac State, and he has adopted the Sutter Buttes as his
research
project. He just
Okay.
comes here whenever he can. He took a sabbatical a year or two ago, and he was here for like just roamed around for 6 months with some other places too.
How cool is that?
Yeah, and his theory is that there was a weak part of the Sacramento Valley, maybe an earthquake fault,
Okay.
and that's what allowed the magma to come up.
Okay.
But they've done studies. They can compare rocks, compare the
composition.
the composition of things, and this has nothing to do with the Cascade Range.
Right.
We're not connected to the Cascades at all.
Mhm.
The closest is Canocti.
Okay.
Mount Canocti is the closest. It's got the most similar lava rocks.
Is that a
like
coastal?
the rhyolite or the andesite or both?
Are
I
they
don't know which.
dacite? Yeah.
I don't know which. We also have some dacite here.
Yeah.
But I don't know which of the lavas is similar to Canocti.
'Cause there was two.
No.
There's two events, right? Because the rhyolite formed first, and then
Yes.
the andesite came up
Came
after
second.
that.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And all it really is a change in the composition of the lava, and I think part of it is there's a lot of silica in rhyolite, and as the lava came up, maybe there was just less and less because andesite doesn't have as much. And andesite does have, she's holding here, these big white crystals which are feldspar.
Yeah.
Which means that the magma had longer time to cool.
Yeah.
To get bigger
So the crystals got
But
larger.
then sometimes sometimes you get little crystals. This is all these are both andesite. And then there's that pink rock over there. That's also andesite, and it's pink because of the iron content. These have iron in them also, but during the eruption, if there was water around, then the iron would more or less rust, and you get this pinkish, or reddish hue to it. And speaking of the water that would cause that, 1.6 million years ago, you would say, "Oh, I wish we had California's current weather. It rained.
It was very, very,
continuously,
very wet.
and it was downpours. Some of the lava flows. You can't see it from here right now because of the trees, but we'll get another view of it. But there's a good spot where you can see a layer up on the top of the ridge. It's reddish, which is the andesite, and down below it's tan. Well, the tan isn't rhyolite; it's an ash flow. There would be
like a lahar flow.
Exactly.
Yeah, mud flow.
During an eruption, there would be a downpour going on, and if the eruptions kind of stopped for a bit, but ash continued to come up, columns of ash coming out of the volcano, it would mix with so much water coming down, it would form a mud flow. And the name for a mud flow in India is lahar.
And then pyrocaustic flow is what you see in Hawaii, where it's the hot molten lava.
And
So there's a difference.
We had that here. There was some, and like the red rocks on the top of the ridge over there, because that whole ridge is a lava flow, and you get layers.
Denise has a photo of what the buttes look like. You want to hold those up?
I was going to show you this first, so the Sierra Range, and then the Coastal Range, and Yuba City, and here's why Middle Mountain, Histimiani, why they would call it that. And it was intriguing to me when I first came out, because I thought, they're this mountain range, but they're a perfect little circle, right? Which I think is adorable. And then I'll pass this around too, and this is the flow and the different, the ramparts, and you can kind of see because the rhyolite came up first, and then the andesite sort of covered it up. But this gives you an idea of that, and I can pass it around.
And the ramparts are kind of like the roots of the tree that go out, and they go out another 10 miles out into the valley floor, but then since the valley floor has been covered up by laser leveling and tractors and stuff like that.
Ramparts is not a geologic term. The early geologists that came here back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, the first one thought this place looked like a castle. It reminded him of a castle. All these craggy rocks coming out. Thought, this is like a castle. So he called the center peaks a castellated core. And the lava flows extending out he called ramparts, because castles in Europe all had ramparts protecting them. So you got your castle in the middle, and you got your walls, your ramparts around, and then when you look at the picture, you'll see this green boundary around it. When the volcano erupted, the pressure pushed first it just pushed up the valley floor and didn't do anything else, just pushed it up. It took a while before there was enough pressure to actually cause the eruption. And part of the valley floor was never covered with lava, and that's what the green is on that map. That's the areas that were never covered with lava, and the early geologists called that the moat. So think of castles in Europe.
Are there any cool, like, interesting minerals from, like, the contact, like metasomatism, or, like, you know, like melting of, like, where you had the sedimentary and, like, the...
Oh, do we have
the
that? I don't
igneous?
know that we had, because it was more, that's more time heat pressure. But I was going to mention the valley, as Sierra Nevada was forming, what we see in the Sierra Nevada is only 4 to 6 million years old. It was 100 million years underground. It's the glaciers that exposed it. It slowly pushed up with plate tectonics, you know, subduction going underneath the continental plate. But what happened is the ancestral Sierra Nevada was pushed off by the granite coming up. It tumbled down all through the watershed. So, you know, you drive up any of the rivers, you see just tons of cobbles. Well, those used to be up in the mountains. They've worked their way down the rivers. And this valley floor here, before the volcano pushed up, was about 2, 3, 4 miles deep in rocks.
Sediment. River
So that kind of answers that question.
Yeah.
So they were already pre-existing, but you can tell this was a river cobbled, you know, river turned, ended up here. I mean, we picked it up here in the buttes, and rocks have a way of working themselves to the surface. And so we come across metamorphic rocks all the time.
Oh, there's not a ton of rhyolite left.
No, but we'll walk you through one of the rhyolite domes. It's just clear straight across.
And you did ask, someone asked about obsidian.
Yes.
And so you take some dust and throw it on the ground. So there was obviously dust in the air for the lichen to survive. When the lichen dies, it becomes dirt.
But the other thing it does
lichen also gets nutrients from the rock that it's growing on, and it puts out an acid to help tear the rock apart so that it can absorb it. Well, it's tearing the rock apart. So all of this earth, this dirt that has plants in the 1600 years we've had. Well, once the volcano quit, let's say 1300 years ago.
No, you gotta put an extra zero.
An extra zero. Add that on. 1,300,000 ago.
Yeah, an extra zero.
Once
or 2.
it stopped, then the lichen could grow, and lichen is one of the first organisms to ever grow anywhere.
Came out of the ocean and went onto the land.
Yeah.
And
so lichen plays
green algae.
a huge role
and
in
a fungal partner.
Yeah, and getting this earth, this ground, so that then other plants can come in and grow.
But that's a whole nother story. But that's what it does. Lichen breaks down rocks, deteriorates it into soil, and puts the nutrients into the soil, which is very important because otherwise we'd have very sterile soil. So you know, all the decomposition with our fungi friends.
Lichen and moss are the first 2 organisms that usually...
He's going to keep us on our toes. Okay, we're going to switch gears. We showed you this one little mortar rock.
Because one would plug up, and then the pressure would build, and another one would start. Some are small, so most of them are kind of medium sized. Some are big, but...
So 40 to 45 calderas, or how would you define?
We don't know about like by chimneys, like the tubes that came up, or like
we find them by peaks. The word caldera in my mind, and I don't know, I'm not a geologist, but it seems to me from what I've seen pictures of, when someone says, well, there's the caldera, it's kind of like you had a volcano and everything caved in. Like Crater Lake would be a good example.
Yeah, it is.
And so Crater Lake's a caldera. If you go to Yellowstone,
that's a caldera.
That's a caldera, but it's huge. It's the rim. So we don't really have that here. We don't have a ring of where anything fell in. They just came up, plugged up, and
I can give you a really quick geology lesson on volcanoes. Are you ready, ladies? There's 4 types of volcanoes. There's the combo special. Let's see. What do we have? Oh, shaving cream, toothpaste, Cocoa Puffs, and the combo special.
We'll start with toothpaste.
Toothpaste.
This is toothpaste.
Is a plugged volcano, a dome volcano. It's plugged up because it was a cool, viscous flow. Yeah, you got it. The Cocoa Pops, that is the cinder cones. They explode.
Like the
Up at Lassen
up
has
at
one.
Lassen, it's called, its name, cinder cone.
Cinder cone.
In the northeast corner of Lassen
Shaving
Park.
Cream, Hawaii, the oozing lava, the pyroclastic flows, and constantly, if you put shaving cream out of a little dome volcano, it would ooze down. Not a super fast, it depends on the rate in the volume.
And that's a shield volcano in geology terms.
And the combo special is a volcano that does a little bit of each. And so some of those, and they're called composite, I think. And then there's the caldera. And that's a volcano that has come up and is self-imploded. Because you think about a volcano, especially it would have to be like a shield volcano, not a plug one like we have, because it's hollow on the inside. Like when you've flown over in a helicopter in Hawaii and you see that, there's a magma that comes up, but it's just kind of a shell of a mountain, not solid, and it will self-implode upon itself and then make a sinkhole like Crater Lake. So does that make sense? Now, Cocoa Pops show.
This one's having a hard time. It's an elderberry. I don't know if you're familiar with elderberries. I'm sure everybody's heard of elderberry wine. Elderberry was used by the Native Americans like a small convenience store. If they took the leaves and crushed them when they're fresh, it was an insect repellent. If they took the leaves and dried them and pounded them in one of their mortar rocks and then made a tea with it, it was one of their medicines. If they took a mixture of tea or if they took a mixture of roots and leaves and made a tea with that, that was a different medicine. One of them was for headaches, one of them was for muscle aches, one of them was for stomach aches, which was really, if your stomach ached, it made you throw up. It was a little bit, slightly poisonous, I guess. Or they used the roots by themselves, but they would dry it out, pound them, make a powder, and make the tea. Berries, obviously, you can eat them. Here, I imagine the berries are okay.
No, you have to get the tannic acid out. They're poisonous.
There's one variety of elderberry that's just fine. There's 3 or 4 different varieties of elderberry, but I don't know which is which. One's called a blue elderberry, one's a red elderberry, on and on. But I do know in Europe they discovered that elderberries could be poisonous unless you cook them. And so in England they called it elderberry or elderberry. Elder doesn't mean old berries.
They'd be using the mortar rock whenever they were in here. They happen to be wintered over or visiting in the fall. So, but they always have a view to North Butte. Every single mortar rock we have found has a view, except for the early ones we showed you this morning. If you're sitting there, you really don't have a view to North Butte. There's a few. The ones were up on the hillside.
They have a great view.
Yeah, it's true, but if you're...
those oak trees out.
No, the big rock is in front of it. That's what I was thinking. If you're down, squatting down, you don't see
That's
it.
true.
Yeah. But the way that we found this rock...
It was a tall Indian.
One day, we were hiking with some kids, and we had them parked down on rocks down the hill, down